As you are all aware, BRP Teresa Magbanua MRB 9701 is deployed inside the shoal of Iskoda since April 15. Next slide. If you're going to look at the screen, you can see MRV 9701 surrounded by Chinese Maritime Forces. You can find two PLA Navy tugboats, 175 and tugboat 185. You can also see two China Coast Guard vessels, China Coast Guard 4301 and 3104, and Chinese Maritime Militia in different areas that are proximate within the distance of MRV 9701. Around 8:50 in the morning, MRV 9701 heaved in its anchor with the intention of loitering around the Iskoda Shoal. And since the Chinese Maritime Forces noticed the movement of the Philippine Coast Guard vessel, that's the time that more China Coast Guard vessels arrive, and more Chinese Maritime Militia vessels also supported all of these maritime forces to surround our vessel. Lapit ako sir, no? I'll just get closer, no, to point it on the monitor. So this is MRV 9701, as I said, no? And based on the drone shot that we are presenting now, you can see two PLA Navy tugboat vessels, 175, and PLA Navy tugboat 185. And then, dito sa initial screen na to, there are only two China Coast Guard vessels that you can see, 4303 and 3104. And then what happened next is that one of the Chinese Coast Guard vessel, upon learning that we are heaving in our anchor, they blow their horn, no? There is a blowing of horn that happened when we heave in our anchor. Next slide. And then, all of a sudden, there is another China Coast Guard vessel that is also approaching and getting near MRB 9701. That is China Coast Guard vessel 5205. Now, it is very important for you to take note of the bow number of this China Coast Guard vessel that is not originally deployed that surround Philippine Coast Guard vessel.
Welcome to the headquarters of the Philippine Coast Guard. I am Undersecretary Alexander S. Lopez, the spokesperson of the National Maritime Council, and with me is Commodore J. Tariela, the spokesperson of the National Task Force of Coast Guard Matters of the West Philippine Sea. The purpose of this press conference is to inform our stakeholders, both internal and external, our viewing public, of what happened today at Iskoda Shoal or Sabina Shoal, where the Chinese Coast Guard vessel rammed the Philippine Coast Guard vessel BRP Teresa Magbanua. And to give you a more detailed presentation, we have videos here to be presented with Commodore Tariela giving or annotating the video as events transpired this morning. So, Commodore Tariela, please.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. As what Yusek Lopez mentioned, I'm going to present to you the details that transpired that resulted to the ramming incident of the Philippine Coast Guard vessel BRP Teresa Magbanua. As you are all aware, BRP Teresa Magbanua MRB 9701 is deployed inside the shoal of Iskoda since April 15. Next slide. If you're going to look at the screen, you can see MRV 9701 surrounded by Chinese Maritime Forces. You can find two PLA Navy tugboats, 175 and tugboat 185. You can also see two China Coast Guard vessels, China Coast Guard 4301 and 3104, and Chinese Maritime Militia in different areas that are proximate within the distance of MRV 9701. Around 8:50 in the morning, MRV 9701 heaved in its anchor with the intention of loitering around the Skoda Shoal. And since the Chinese Maritime Forces noticed the movement of the Philippine Coast Guard vessel, that's the time that more China Coast Guard vessels arrive, and more Chinese Maritime Militia vessels also supported all of these maritime forces to surround our vessel. Lapit ako sir, no? I'll just get closer, no, to point it on the monitor. So this is MRV 9701, as I said, no? And based on the drone shot that we are presenting now, you can see two PLA Navy tugboat vessels, 175, and PLA Navy tugboat 185. And then, dito sa initial screen na to, there are only two China Coast Guard vessels that you can see, 4303 and 3104. And then what happened next is that one of the Chinese Coast Guard vessel, upon learning that we are heaving in our anchor, they blow their horn, no? There is a blowing of horn that happened when we heave in our anchor. Next slide. And then, all of a sudden, there is another China Coast Guard vessel that is also approaching and getting near MRB 9701. That is China Coast Guard vessel 5205. Now, it is very important for you to take note of the bow number of this China Coast Guard vessel that is not originally deployed that surround Philippine Coast Guard vessel. Next slide. Because around 12:07, when the Philippine Coast Guard vessel is already on the move, click mo atong video. Play mo. China Coast Guard vessel 5205 carried out a dangerous maneuver resulting to its direct ramming on the port bow of MRRB 9701. Obviously, the Chinese Coast Guard vessel 5202 has ignored collision regulation because of such action. And then what happened next after this in 12:07 is that it would turn around, next slide, and then it will reach the starboard quarter of the vessel. Click the video. It will also directly and intentionally ram MRB 9701 on our starboard quarter. A few minutes after it carried out a dangerous maneuver and rammed the port bow of Teresa, Magbanua. After this, it went around and then did another ramming to Philippine Coast Guard vessel. Next slide. On the port beam of MRB 9701, China Coast Guard 5202 has once again directly and intentionally rammed the Philippine Coast Guard vessel. It is important for us to take note that this ramming happened despite of our unprovoked action and presence in Skoda Shoal. The Philippine Coast Guard vessel did not provoke or did not do anything while we are loitering around Skoda Shoal, but the Chinese Coast Guard carried out dangerous maneuvers despite of being unprovoked. Next slide. These are the damages that the BRP Teresa Magbanua has incurred as a result of the direct ramming and intentional collision carried out by China Coast Guard 5202. There is a damage on the bridge wing and also on the freeboard of the 9707. 9701. Next. There is this hole that also was a result of a direct ramming conducted by the China Coast Guard and also on this part. Next slide. As we are conducting this press conference now, I would like to report also to everyone that the Philippine Coast Guard vessel MRV 9701, as of 14:59 or 2:59 p.m. this afternoon, has already dropped its anchor, located also inside Shoal. Next slide. So that ends my operational details briefing.
Thank you very much, Commodore Toriela. So, with those operational details of what happened this morning, we are now open for your questions. Thank you.
Sir, may mga nasaktan po ba tayo sa ating mga taruhan po dun sa ating po, yung sinagawa po ng Chinese Coast Guard yung program and dangerous maneuvering po?
Based on the conversation of the Commandant, Admiral Ronnie Hilgavan, to the commanding officer of MRV 9701, there were no reported injured personnel of BRP Teresa Magbanua.
Sir, gaano kalaki po yung hole na nakita natin in terms of diameter?
As of this time, we still don't have the details of the damages that we incurred. It will still be evaluated. I think the Commandant has already mentioned that there is a need for us to send our team to evaluate and to ensure the seaworthiness of BRP Teresa Magbanua despite of the damages that she incurred as a result of the direct ramming of the Chinese Coast Guard.
Sir, just to clarify again, so this is the eighth, if please correct me if I'm wrong, eighth harassment that we have experienced since August 8th po? Is that right?
Since August 8th?
Yeah.
8?
Is it, or?
I don't think so. The last incident that we had was August 19. The BFAR vessel was launched. There was a flare that were launched by the PLA Air Force. And then 22 August, the BFAR aircraft in Zamora Reef. 25 August was the BRP vessels, BFAR vessels, Datu Sanday, also from Hasa Hasa to Skoda. And 27 August was the 4409 and 4411. So this the PIF.
This month?
Yes.
Thank you.
Sir, you mentioned that Magbanua lifted anchor and then dropped it somewhere in the afternoon, sir. Is it the same spot or different from the original?
I think that would be a different spot. It is important for us to note that because of the presence of concentrated maritime forces from the previous place where we drop our anchor, it would no longer be possible for the Coast Guard to once again go back to its position where she dropped her anchor.
Sir, how far is it from the original?
I'm sorry, I don't have the details for that.
Sir, how long will it stay in that current spot?
As far as the Philippine Coast Guard is concerned, as what the Commandant has been mentioning, our role for us to deploy our Coast Guard vessel is to carry out Coast Guard operation. This is the commitment of the Commandant to the President that despite of the harassment, the bullying activities, and escalatory action of the Chinese Coast Guard, the Philippine Coast Guard vessel Teresa Magbanua or any other replacement of the vessels, there will be no reason for us to withdraw our Coast Guard vessels there.
Sir, kailangan na po ba ng saklolo from Philippine Navy sa kabila ng mga nararanasang pangahara sa China?
No, this is purely a Coast Guard activity. Very routine naman ito, no? The Coast Guard vessel, they are conducting patrols or even, from the past days, they are providing provisions to the Coast Guard personnel. So the Navy is not a part of this activity, purely Coast Guard activity.
Yes, sir.
Sir, this is the fifth incident this month. I think this must be, I guess, since the start of the year, maybe worse. China has been doing incidents with the Philippines. How alarming is this for, I guess, the situation at sea?
Well, the position of our government, especially the National Maritime Council, we take this with serious concern. That's why through our cognizant Department of Foreign Affairs, we have issued statements to the Chinese Embassy and even to the Embassy of our Philippines in Beijing, issuing our serious concern with these acts of the Chinese vessels.
Sir, last August 28, you conducted an airdrop flights via chopper to Teresa, Magbanua. After this incident today, sir, how are you gonna do the succeeding resupply?
I'm sorry, we don't discuss operational details when it comes to Coast Guard operation.
Sir, for this incident, what would be our next step? Are we gonna summon the ambassador, or are we gonna file another diplomatic protest?
Well, this is part of the reports that we will be submitting to the Department of Foreign Affairs, and then the DFA will come up with its own study and to come up with the most appropriate actions on their part.
Sir, ano pong nakikita natin motive po ng Chinese Coast Guard? Dahil po wala naman po tayong, yung Coast Guard po natin wala naman pong ginagawa, wala pong, hindi rin po gumante, pero patuloy pa rin po yung kanilang mga aggressive moves po.
Well, it's important for us to understand that Shoal has been an issue for the Chinese government. Since we deployed BRP Teresa Magbanua last April 15, this has always been a reason for China to always make it an issue. They even filed a diplomatic protest for BRP Teresa Magbanua to be to withdraw from Shoal. They also use different platforms to highlight that they are seeing this as a semi-grounded or a possible place for creating a forward deployment base. So as far as the Chinese Coast Guard is concerned, these are their different appreciation of our deployment for Teresa Magbanua. But as I said, for the Philippine Coast Guard, the reason and objective of the deployment of Teresa Magbanua is only purely for us to carry out a legal and legitimate Coast Guard operation within our own exclusive economic zone.
Dagdagan ko lang, let us be clear about it. The Shoal is 75 nautical miles from mainland Palawan. Sabi nga ni Commodore Teresa, it's well within our 200 exclusive economic zone. Dalawa ang pinag-aangklahan natin, the UNCLOS and the 2016 arbiter ruling. So we exercise sovereignty, sovereign rights, and jurisdiction over the area. So the Chinese Coast Guard vessels are the ones illegally, presence nila there are illegal. We are there on the legal basis dahil atin yun. Hindi tayo pwedeng magpaalam sa sariling bahay natin. Let us be very clear about it.
Sir, for the council lang po, after this incident, are you going to recommend the extension of the coverage of the provisional agreement with China, currently covering Ayungin, but now is Scottish?
It is part of the study of actually the Department of Foreign Affairs now. We were actually hoping that the provisional understanding there at the Ayungin Shoal would cover Sana, but it did not happen. So the DFA is really seriously studying that matter.
So as source, you wanted initially Sana to cover Scottish Shoal as well, or the entire?
We were actually hoping that the condition, the standing would cover the other areas, if not the whole. But hindi nga nangyari.
China did not want it?
Well, apparently, iba yung nangyari sa Skoda, iba yung nangyari dun sa Ayungin.
We're okay?
Are we good?
Yes, sir.
So, if
Wala na
Commander
ako, sir.
Teresa won't be stating anymore, thank you very much for coming over. We hope to see you again. Okay, thank you. Good afternoon to everyone.